In the 1930s, a memorial to the Great War is built in Sydney's Callan Park by former soldiers who fought in World War I. It's designed by an Aboriginal veteran whose birth name is never officially recorded. As a child, he's orphaned in a North Queensland frontier massacre. In the wake of this tragedy, a Sydney couple, the scientist Robert Grant and his wife Elizabeth, remove him from his country. Eventually, the Grants adopt the boy. They name him Douglas. Though officially not allowed to join the army due to their race, over 1,000 Indigenous men served during World War I.
Douglas Grant is one of them. He marches as a soldier at Sydney's 1916 Anzac Day. Grant fights on the Western Front. He's captured and becomes a prisoner of war. When he gets home, he suffers discrimination, struggles with his mental health, and becomes a heavy drinker. At an Anzac Day in the 1940s, Grant encounters an old friend at Sydney's Domain.
I saw Douglas standing very dejectedly under a tree. I went across and I said, "Come on, Douglas, hop in." "Oh, no," he said, "no, I'm not wanted anymore." I said, "Oh, yes, you are. On a day like this, Douglas, everybody wants you." "Oh, I think I'm better out here. I think I'm better out here. I don't belong. I don't belong."
Grant is eventually persuaded to join the ranks of his fellow veterans. On this one day of the year, the outsider becomes an insider. Douglas Grant dies just a few years later. In its early decades, Anzac Day is dominated by a certain type of veteran, the returned man, a soldier who fought overseas. They see themselves as the custodians of the Anzac tradition and set up returned servicemen's organisations to protect their legacy.
It's secret men's business, so it's the stories of war, it's what they did when they were on the battlefields, it's those kinds of things that want to be talked about and celebrated on Anzac Day.
Between the wars, the largest group of Australians relegated to the outer edge of commemoration are women.
The organisers of Anzac Day instruct Melbourne women, do not come to the dawn service. This belongs to men. This is a men's space. And it's actually described that others being there robs the day. Rob is the word that they use. Robs Anzac Day of its meaning.
Sir, I cannot understand why women will persist in being present at the dawn service at the shrine on Anzac Day, after being publicly asked to stay away. Yours, N. Osborne, Brighton Beach.
Sir, it would be better to have no service if our men are lacking in chivalry. It is 20 years since my brother was mortally wounded in France. Why should I be not wanted? Yours, Margaret Groom, North Carlton.
In other parts of the country, women establish their own rituals and sites of commemoration. In South Australia, they raise money to create a women's war memorial garden.
And they build this beautiful memorial in the middle of Adelaide, and it's designed to be reminiscent of a Commonwealth war grave cemetery. There's a cross of sacrifice, there's a stone of remembrance, there's beautiful manicured lawns, and it's really so that the women of Adelaide can go to this memorial, to this parkland, and have an imagined journey of sorts. Most of them are not going to be able to go to France or Belgium or Gallipoli. So in this memorial that women build, they are able to mourn and grieve their loved ones.
In Sydney, women acquire a champion, the formidable Mary Booth, one of the first Australian women to qualify as a doctor. During the war, Booth supports conscription and works tirelessly for war widows. In peacetime, she becomes a powerful advocate for the inclusion of women in the Anzac story.
In theory, Mary Booth is on the periphery. She is a woman. She can't take place in those traditional Anzac Day commemorations, but that doesn't deter her. She sees that as an opportunity to create her own traditions, her own rituals, so that Australian women are part of this story as well. So she leads Anzac pilgrimages to the gates at Woolloomooloo, and women place their floral wreaths on the gates there as a service in honour of their loved ones. This is the last place they saw them before they went to war, and their farewells happened here.
The Anzac Dawn service is without a doubt a signature event on the Australian calendar. Every year Australians rise before daybreak and gather at the time of day that the original Anzacs landed in Turkey. The ceremony is theatrical, cathartic and very Australian. And at its heart is the story of a grieving woman. Or so the story goes.
On Anzac Eve in 1927, a number of veterans of the First World War were returning home from an Anzac Eve gathering and witnessed an elderly woman attempting to lay a wreath of flowers on the cenotaph. And so they sought to help her place that sheaf of flowers. And the soldiers went away from that experience of wreath laying and silence and a woman's grief, committed to wanting to replicate that occasion in the future. Now, that origin story, whether it's the truth or not, what we do know is true is that the first dawn service officially is held at Sydney's Cenotaph in Martin Place in 1928.
Throughout the 1930s, the dawn service becomes exceptionally popular right across the nation. Anzac Day is now deeply embedded in the Australian way of life. By 1927, Anzac Day is a public holiday in every state, and from the 1930s, it's broadcast by the ABC each year on the radio.